Welcome to Echoes of the Past, where history isn't just old, it's oddly fascinating.
From forgotten facts to bizarre backstories, we dig into the dusty corners of time
So
so
you
you
don't
don't
have
have
to.
to.
I'm Jody Lynn, your amateur historian and full time trivia hoarder.
And I'm Ephraim here for the facts and the fun.
So let's rewind the clock and press play on the past. Now, this one does have quite a bit of unfortunate historical events. Um, so, I guess trigger warning for some kind of sensitive topics on race and parts of the world and stuff like that. So, just putting that here now. If you don't want to listen to it, I guess don't, and we'll see you next week. Or into this week, technically. Um, Before recorded borders, before empires carved their names into maps, humanity was already leaving behind a darker record. Not just monuments or inventions, but evidence of suffering. History is often framed as progress, as a timeline of achievement and innovation. Yet beneath that narrative runs another current entirely. It is a record of collapse, cruelty, desperation, and violence. These moments are not anomalies sitting outside history, they are a part of its structure, shaping migration, politics, economies, and identities long after the events themselves fade. Tonight we are not exploring legends or that is whole mythologized battles. We are looking at documented incidents that forced the world to confront the limits of its own humanity. Some unfolded slowly across decades, others erupted within weeks, but each left measurable scars on societies and on memory. This episode is not about spectacle, it is about confronting the conditions under which ordinary systems fail and extraordinary suffering becomes possible. To understand the present, we sometimes have to sit with the past without flinching.
One of the earliest large scale catastrophes we have written evidence for isn't a single event. It's a social domino effect that wrecked entire civilizations. It affected regions across the eastern Mediterranean, including areas tied to ancient Egypt, the Hittite Empire.
I think it's the Hittite.
I don't know.
It does look like Hittite.
And Greece.
Mycenium?
Greece. Cities burned, trade collapsed, famine and migration spread. Migration spread. Widespread warfare linked to raiders, often called the Sea Peoples.
No,
Tablets
it's not the Sea Peoples.
described chaos, kingdoms disappearing within decades. It's horrifying not because of one massacre, but because entire societies unraveled, likely leading to starvation, displacement, and violence on a massive scale.
Then we move to the sack of Ur in 2004 BCE, recorded in Sumerian laments. This event describes the destruction of the city of Ur in Mesopotamia. This had invading forces destroying the city, mass killings were reported, survivors enslaved, and religious texts describe bodies left in streets. The emotional tone of surviving writings is striking. Grief, anger at abandoned gods, and trauma. It's among the first recorded human accounts of collective devastation.
The Plague of Athens from 430 BCE. During the Peloponnesian War, a mysterious disease ravaged Athens. Documented by historian some Greek dude. Symptoms included fever and internal burning, vomiting and bleeding, madness, despair, and massive mortality rates, possibly up to a third of the population.
Jesus.
Social breakdown followed, burial customs abandoned, lawlessness increased, and morale collapsed.
Then the next one is the destruction of Pompeii, which I feel like everybody knows about by now, which happened in 79 CE when Mount Vesuvius erupted. The Roman city of Pompeii was buried. Victims died from superheated gas clouds, ash suffocation, and structural collapse. What makes this horrific is the preservation of families frozen mid-escape, people shielding children, and animals still chained. It's less legend and more time capsule of panic and death.
The Mongol conquests. Centuries before modern mechanized warfare, the expansion of the Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan demonstrated how terror could function as a strategic instrument. Beginning in the 13th century, mounted armies advanced across Asia and into Europe with unprecedented mobility and coordination. Entire cities were annihilated when resistance occurred, and the survivors were intentionally spared only to carry stories of devastation forward. Urban centers and regions connected to Baghdad and beyond faced destruction that ended centuries of scholarship and infrastructure. Libraries were burned, irrigation systems dismantled, and populations displaced or killed in staggering numbers. The psychological component of these campaigns often ensured that the future targets surrendered without resistance, proving that fear itself could be weaponized to expand the empire. The legacy of conquest is complex, involving cultural exchange and trade stabilization in later years. But the early expansion illustrates how a brutal truth. Calculated violence can function as communication, reshaping geopolitical landscapes through reputation as much as the battle.
So I want to go back a little bit on the sack of since the Mongols did kind of help with that. In 1258, the Mongol advance culminated in the fall of one of the most influential cities of the medieval world. Baghdad, long associated with learning and scientific preservation, experienced devastation that symbolized more than territorial conquest. Cultural memory describes manuscripts lost and institutions dismantled, as well as communities erased. The event marked a transition in regional power structures and demonstrated how fragile intellectual ecosystems can be when confronted with military destruction. The loss extended beyond immediate casualties. Knowledge accumulation itself was interrupted. It serves as an example of how violence against infrastructure can echo through centuries of intellectual development.
Indigenous displacement in the Americas. The expansion of European settlements across territories, including those within what became the United States, involved systematic displacement of indigenous populations. Policies enforced relocation away from ancestral lands, disrupting cultures and livelihoods. The experience often combined violence, disease exposure, and environmental hardship. Trails of relocation, including those associated with forced marches, represented a chapter of history defined not by sudden battle, but by sustained erosion of autonomy. Cultural continuity and demographic stability were deeply affected, and the repercussions remain part of contemporary social and political discourse.
Then we move on to the Black Death and the shape of invisible terror. Between 1347 and 1351, the world experienced devastation on a scale that permanently altered civilization. The pandemic, later known as the Black Death, tore across trade routes from Asia into Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, infiltrating ports and caravans alike. By the time it subsided, tens of millions were dead, perhaps a third of Europe's population, and the social order itself had fractured. Contemporaries in cities like Florence and London wrote of streets falling silent except for the sound of carts collecting bodies. Families abandoned their own out of fear of infection, priests refused last rites, and burial grounds overflowed and mass graves became the only option. Entire villages vanished from record. The horror of the pandemic was not simply the scale of mortality, but the psychological disintegration it triggered. Faith in divine protection faltered, scapegoating and violence erupted, and economic collapse reshaped power structures. Labor shortages destabilized feudal hierarchies, planting the seeds of transformation that would ripple through centuries. The plague demonstrated that devastation need not arrive with armies. It could come unseen, indifferent, and unstoppable.
The transatlantic slave trade. Beginning in the 16th century and continuing for hundreds of years, European colonial expansion produced one of the most sustained systems of human exploitation in recorded history. Driven by economic demand in colonies across the Americas, millions of Africans were captured, sold, and transported across the Atlantic under conditions engineered for profit rather than survival. Ships departing ports connected to powers like Portugal and Britain, packed with people in holds where disease spread freely and sanitation did not exist. The Middle Passage became synonymous with suffocation, dehydration, and despair. Mortality rates were staggering, yet loss of life was calculated into commercial planning rather than treated as a tragedy. Those who survived arrived into systems of forced labor that erased identity, fractured families, and institutionalized generational trauma. Violence maintained control, and cultural erasure was systematic. The legacy of this trade did not end with abolition. It reshaped demographics, economies, and racial hierarchies that are still
It still reverberates.
still reverberate today. It stands as an example of cruelty embedded not in chaos, but in structure and profit.
Then we look at the Irish famine, which I feel like everybody heard about in high school or middle school. Between 1845 and 1852, crop failure in Ireland triggered widespread starvation, yet the scale of devastation cannot be attributed solely to environmental factors. Political and economic frameworks influenced relief distribution and land usage, intensifying suffering among rural populations dependent on a limited food source. Communities experienced mass displacement, illness, and mortality, while migration reshaped demographics globally. Ships carried survivors abroad, often under conditions that mirrored desperation rather than opportunity. The famine reveals how governance decisions during crisis can amplify tragedy, transforming ecological disaster into prolonged humanitarian collapse. You want to hear a fun fact about this?
Sure.
The people of California are saying that they're going to have another Irish famine because of the almond farmers, and now because of the AI super centers. And they're blaming the farmers for them not having water.
Californians have to be some of the most brain dead people I've ever met. And I'm allowed to say that I used to live in California.
So you're technically from California if you think about it.
It's weird just how it was, born in Colorado, lived in California, moved to Idaho. It's like,
now you live in Texas.
now I live in Texas. Just been all over the place. Furthest east I've been is Georgia. When I had a bunch of dudes with funny looking hats yell at me about finding pubes on the fucking urinals.
Did they ever yell at y'all about the fucking waffle stomping dude?
No one did that.
I thought you said one of them shouldn't. No, that was at MTC, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was NTC.
Not bad.
Yeah,
Anyway, back on.
They had a shower guard. That shit was stupid. Anyways.
That Taiping.
The Taiping Rebellion from 1850 to 1864. Internal conflict with China escalated into one of the deadliest wars in human history. The Taiping Rebellion emerged from political instability, economic distress, and spiritual ideology that sought to overthrow the ruling
of the Qing dynasty. Qing?
Sure. Qing dynasty. What followed was not a contained uprising, but a prolonged civil war that devastated vast regions of the country. Cities changed hands repeatedly, agricultural production collapsed, and the displacement spread through entire provinces. Warfare combined with famine and disease pushed the death toll into staggering territory, altering population structures and weakening the state's control over its own territory. Entire landscapes were left depopulated, and reconstruction took decades. The rebellion illustrates how internal fractures can escalate into destruction rivaling international war, reminding observers that devastation does not always originate from foreign invasion. Sometimes it comes from ideological fracture within.
I'm pretty sure that's the Qing dynasty. It's Qing. Pretty sure that's what that is. Atrocities in the Congo. In the late 19th century, exploitation reached an especially brutal form in Central Africa under the rule of Leopold II. His personal control of territory now within Democratic Republic of the Congo created a regime centered on rubber extraction for industrial markets. Villages were coerced into impossible quotas enforced through hostage-taking, mutilation, and execution. Hands were severed as proof of punishment or ammunition accounting. Famine followed displacement and forced labor, while entire communities collapsed under sustained terror. Side note, how are you supposed to get rubber out of a tree if you ain't got no hands?
Okay, it wasn't about, that. It was just people being assholes.
I know. Anyway, what distinguishes this atrocity historically is how it fused imperial ambition with corporate extraction. International outrage eventually forced administrative change, but only after millions had perished. It remains a defining example of colonial exploitation and its most unrestrained.
The Herero and Nama genocide from 1904 to 1908. Between 1904 and 1908, policies enacted by colonial authorities of Germany and what is now Namibia resulted in systematic destruction of the Herero and Nama people. Military campaigns forced populations into desert regions where survival became nearly impossible due to lack of water and resources. Detention camps followed for survivors, and mortality continued through deprivation and disease. This episode represents one of the earliest 20th century examples of state dictate blah 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 state directed population destruction with a colonial framework, demonstrating how expansionist ideology combined with racial hierarchy could translate into deliberate elimination of communities. Go see this dude's yelling for.
Go see what Cheese's opinion is. The Armenian genocide. During the First World War, policies enacted by leadership within the Ottoman Empire led to the systematic elimination of Armenian populations living within its borders. Beginning in 1915, arrests, executions, and forced deportations drove civilians into marches across inhospitable terrain. The process weaponized geography and deprivation. Starvation, exposure, and violence reduced entire communities. Survivors carried the memory into diaspora communities across the world, while the loss reshaped regional demographics permanently. This tragedy marked a turning point in international recognition of targeted population destruction as a defining crime of modern state power.
The Holodomor starvation from 1932 to 1933. Famine spread across agricultural regions of Ukraine during the period of Soviet collectivization under the leadership within the Soviet Union. Agricultural policies, grain requisitions, and restrictions on movement compounded crop failure, leaving rural communities without access to food or means of relocation. Starvation reshaped entire regions and remains a subject of historical and political debate regarding intent and accountability. Regardless of interpretation, the human impact was undeniable. Widespread mortality, displacement, and generational trauma tied to hunger imposed on an enormous scale. The famine serves as a reminder that policy decisions governing resources can determine survival as decisively as warfare.
The rape of Nanjing and Unit 731. In 1937, forces from Japan entered the city of Nanjing, unleashing weeks of violence against civilians. You cannot touch the microphone. Killing, assault, and destruction spread through the population, leaving deep scars that remain part of regional historical memory. Parallel to battlefield atrocities, covert research programs explored biological and chemical warfare through human experimentation. These actions blurred boundaries between science and cruelty, reinforcing the extent to which wartime ideology can normalize dehumanization when oversight dissolves.
The Holocaust.
The thing that some people think did never happen.
Between 1941 and 1945, policies orchestrated by the regime governing Germany under Adolf Hitler culminated in the systematic murder of millions. The machinery of genocide combined ideology, bureaucracy, and industrial infrastructure. Rail networks transported victims to camps engineered for detention, exploitation, and extermination. Identification and confiscation, forced labor, and execution followed administrative procedure. It demonstrated how modern organization and technology could be mobilized towards eradication rather than progress. Beyond the scale of loss, the Holocaust transformed international law and moral discourse, influencing human rights frameworks and reshaping global understanding of state accountability.
Now, the Soviet gulags.
Sorry.
Within the 20th century, Soviet system governed the Soviet Union under figures including Joseph Stalin. Networks of labor camps became instruments of political repression. Prisoners were transported to remote regions where environment itself acted as punishment. Extreme cold, food scarcity, and relentless labor reduced survival odds dramatically. The camps illustrate how suffering can be institutionalized not through spectacle but through endurance, a slow erosion of human capacity under systematic neglect and coercion.
Atomic warfare. The closing stage of the Second World War introduced a form of destruction previously unimaginable. In August 1945, atomic weapons detonated over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, demonstrating the capacity of technological advancement to compress devastation into seconds. Structures vanished, fires spread, and radiation introduced consequences extending far beyond the initial blast. Survivors navigated physical injury, long-term illness, and psychological trauma, while global consciousness shifted permanently. Warfare had entered a phase where single actions could threaten entire populations instantly. These events continued to frame debates around deterrence, ethics, and existential risk in international policy.
Do you want to hear a fun fact that I learned?
Sure.
So, when they were testing the nuclear bombs and weapons, there was a giant metal jug, essentially, that they would blow them up in. And it was like 8 inches of just solid fucking steel, right? Okay? Mm-hmm. When they were finally done, there was only one that was left standing and it was pretty much intact. The people who made it went back years after, like their specialists went back to look at it to see, how it fared, how it stood up, blah, blah, blah. And if you go to the site, you can kind of go look at it and, look at, all the information about it. And they said, the welds are still good. And that was literally the only thing they had to say about it.
Really?
Yeah. I thought that was kind of funny. The Cultural Revolution. Between 1966 and 1976, political campaigns within China led by Mao Zedong encouraged ideological purification across society. Social institutions, education systems, and cultural heritage sites become targets of upheaval as factions struggled for influence and conformity. Public humiliation, imprisonment, and violence affected individual or intellectuals, officials, and ordinary citizens alike. Cultural artifacts were destroyed, and generational continuity of scholarship and tradition was disrupted. The period demonstrates how mass mobilization around ideological purity can destabilize societies internally, producing harm not only physically but culturally.
Cambodia and Rwanda. The closing decades of the 20th century demonstrated that mass atrocity was not confined to distant history. In Cambodia, revolutionary policies enforced by the leadership under Pol Pot sought to reshape society through forced relocation and labor, producing widespread death through execution and deprivation. Less than 2 decades later, ethnic violence in Rwanda erupted into mass killings in 1994. The speed and intensity revealed how propaganda, fear, and political instability can ignite catastrophic violence within weeks, leaving lasting regional and psychological scars. Did you know that Pol Pot, after everything was said and done, the only crime or his only punishment for all the atrocities he committed was just house arrest?
Are you kidding me? Oh my
Nope.
God. Isn't that what the movie Hotel Rwanda is about?
No, Pol Pot.
No,
that's Cambodia, or Pol Pot is in Cambodia. I don't really know anything about the Rwandan genocide.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Hotel Rwanda, I think, is between the Tutsis and the Hutsis, whatever they're called. The Yugoslav Wars. By the way, great movie. If you like movies that are historical, great movie. The Yugoslav Wars. From 1991 through 2001, the dissolution of the Yugoslavia produced a series of conflicts across the Balkans marked by beans. Hold on, guys. Beans is disrupting the episode. Hold on. How did you even do that? Hold on, guys. Hold on.
Our
Beans.
Stupid ass cat just plopped her ass down on the desk and it scrolled the script all the way back up to the beginning.
Don't do that. Anyways, from 1991 through 2001, the dissolution of Yugoslavia produced a series of conflicts across the Balkans marked by ethnic tension, territorial dispute, and humanitarian crisis. Cities endured siege conditions, civilians were displaced, and atrocities committed during the wars drew global attention. These conflicts illustrated that mass violence and displacement were not relics of distant centuries, but remained possible in the modern era. International intervention and war crime tribunals that followed reshaped approaches to justice and accountability, emphasizing global responsibility to respond when internal conflict escalates into humanitarian disaster.
You want to know how it started?
Sure.
By a dude sticking a glass jar up his ass and it breaking.
That's that?
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I've heard about that.
Yeah. So at the time, there were already like very high tensions, political tension, and all that stuff in that area. And then one day, this dude shoved a glass jar up his ass, and it broke. And instead of admitting that he was sticking a jar up his ass, he said this other group of people beat him up and shoved glass shards up in his ass, and then they started a whole ass war.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
How did they finally figure out that he lied?
I don't know.
Oh my god.
But that's how that whole thing started, because the dude shoved a glass jar up his butt, and it broke.
See, I've heard that part that, he did that and it broke, but I didn't know any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Because people bring it up every now and then, they joke about it. Yeah,
there's I don't watch the podcast, but a podcast done by one of the YouTubers I watched, the Unsubscribed podcast, I think it's called, and they talk about it in one of the episodes recently, I think.
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
The Syrian Civil War from 2011 to the present. Beginning in 2011, the continuing into the present, conflict within Syria had produced widespread displacement, infrastructure collapse, and civilian hardship. Urban destruction, shifting territorial control, and international involvement turned local unrest into prolonged conflict with global implications. Millions have been forced from their homes, reshaping immigration patterns across continents and placing strain on humanitarian systems. The ongoing nature of the crisis highlights a final sobering truth for historical examination. The catalog of suffering is not closed. New chapters are still being written. I had a kid in my middle school. He came from Syria.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Baker Hamid. And
that does not sound like a Syrian name to me.
Yeah, he spoke very little English.
Mm-hmm.
And with the last name Hamid, I kept calling him Baker Hamimi. And he'd get so, like, I guess pissy about it. And I go, dude, man, it's just a joke. And he's like, oh, okay. And I keep doing it. And he kept, like, getting mad. It was funny.
Ow.
It was funny.
So, before we close out, let's talk about this. I do not understand these people who think that the Holocaust didn't happen with all the proof that we have. Now, I can understand the people who say that maybe it wasn't that many people that died.
Yeah.
That, I can kind of understand their reasoning because I've looked into the logic of it. But just thinking it didn't happen at all, and all these buildings and camps that are still standing are just fabrications of the media or whatever, is retarded.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with that? You obviously think the Holocaust happened.
Maybe not on, like, the scale they claim it, but yeah, it happened.
Yeah. Well, I was looking into it, and one of the main reasons that they don't think it was that like massive of a thing is because they can't find the mass graves that everybody's talking about.
Yeah, and the numbers don't add up.
Mm-hmm.
Because they say they change the number every freaking time, but what I was taught, it was like 4 million.
Yeah,
Jewish.
It was a really large.
4 million people killed in the Holocaust, not just Jewish people. It's
yeah.
like the gays, the gypsies, people they didn't agree with, political prisoners. It was a lot of people, not just the Jewish people.
Yeah, it just, looking at the logic that people bring into it, it makes sense. And, like, I don't want to say that I believe it 100%, whether it was that many people or not. I'm not going to say, but I do obviously think it happened. And obviously, these are not all of the main, like, all of the massive historical incidents in the entire world. Throughout history, there's obviously a lot that we probably didn't hit. We went over the ones that have made a huge impact on things. And we didn't get into a few of the topics as much as I would like to, just because they're very sensitive topics to that kind of demographic.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I have any right to talk about those technically without getting canceled. Do you agree with that?
People have been canceled for less.
I know. That's why, if you noticed, on those specific things, I was very careful on what I said.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you would like to add or talk about? She's back.
Yep. I think with, like, the here you can clearly see that communism is not a great political...
Considering that at least 3 of those were about that area of the world.
Yeah, clearly not. the greatest government, but there's still those retards who are like, oh, we should replace our government with a communist one.
I was gonna say, I like how the Soviets and the Chinese came in like 3 or 4 times throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, well, China's history is whack. It's all over the place. You look into any war they had, and it's just wild. The amount of people who die in them, and all the reasoning why they do it.
They're like, oh, you pissed me off.
Of course, the Soviet Union under the rule of Joseph Stalin was
not great.
Not great. You know, the KGB and the Stasi had agents everywhere, and if you said like one bad thing about Stalin, the next thing you know, you're waking up on a train going to bumfuck nowhere Siberia to mine coal till you drop.
They're saying that about Putin now. That if he finds out that you're talking shit about him and you live in Russia, he'll fuck you up.
Yeah. And that supposedly happened to some internet personality in Russia.
Yeah.
She made a comment about Putin, and then next thing
it was right before the war too, wasn't it?
I don't remember. And then next thing you know, they found her body in a suitcase.
It's fucking wild, man.
Yeah. Then you got China. They say they're a communist government, but really they're a capitalist society who just under the guise of communism.
They like the word.
They like the word more than they like doing it. I mean, that still doesn't stop. You know, they're still doing communist things. You know, or state-run everything, media, all that jazz. Threatening Taiwan all the time. They're stupid copies of everything.
Somebody in an article that I read, it was a country. Oh, it was New Zealand. They were saying that China's war items, like their war weaponry, was the most new age and the best out there on the market.
Yeah, maybe for like 2008.
Yeah, he went on like public talk about that.
I don't think
during a press conference.
These people know what the fuck they're talking about.
I mean, this is New Zealand.
A lot of China's stuff is just copy and pasted from Western governments and like and I was supposed to say the Soviet Union, but that doesn't exist anymore.
They still probably stole search from them.
They did. Like a lot of their technology was just taken from their allies from other countries. They reverse engineered it, and then they made their own copy and like, yep, I made this. Like recently, they made a copy of the B-2 Spirit Bomber, and it's like the ugliest looking thing I've ever seen. Like the B-2 Spirit Bomber is a stealth bomber because the way it's shaped and designed and all that.
Is that the triangle one?
Yeah, it's the weird looking Dorito one.
Yeah.
But for China, they added these stupid little wingtip things that curve up that completely defeat the purpose of stealth.
Don't those make it louder?
Yeah.
Because you can hear the wind.
Well, that, and you could see it's a bigger radar presence. Mm-hmm. Stop looking at me like that, weirdo. Cat's looking at me funny.
Put the eyes on safe. No.
But yeah,
somebody in China is gonna start listening to our podcast, which I'm surprised we haven't had somebody in China listen to our podcast yet.
Well, they're very big on not letting them have stuff from
yeah, I forgot about that.
States.
But they're gonna listen and they're gonna hear all the shit we talk.
I don't give a fuck. Splish splash, communism is trash.
We're gonna get some weird ass letter from some Chinese lawyer, cease and desist. You
get cease and desist these nuts.
Can you imagine if that happened? I've heard of funnier.
Yeah, I'm gonna write a letter back asking if they like Wendy's nuts dragged across their face.
You said that, all I could think of, rock and roll McDonald's.
What were we talking about?
China and them stealing shit.
China. Yeah.
And why they keep popping up in our
episode
like
today. I said, China, communist government, really retarded. We didn't put the we should have put Tiananmen Square on here.
We'll explain that one.
So in 1989, I forgot the date specifically.
That's
but
fine.
1989 in China, a bunch of students, like college students and whatnot, were protesting the government, and the Chinese government rolled out tanks and the military and killed a bunch of people.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you've probably seen the picture, but it's they call him Tank Man, where he's standing in front of a column of tanks with his grocery bags in his hands.
I think I've seen that. Yeah,
You've seen that. It's a very.
I had to have seen that.
It's
Where's my mouse? There it is.
Very
China Tank Man.
Just do Tank Man. Yeah.
That guy. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
There's some Adult Swim cartoons that bring that up.
Yeah. But that's like what part of the Tiananmen Square massacre, where the Chinese government murdered a bunch of students and people who were out protesting.
Well, there was two other ones that I wanted to bring up before we quit out.
Yeah. Of course, now in China, if you say anything about it, they censor it. So if you ever play a video game with like Chinese players and you put it in like the chat, they'll get disconnected from the internet.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they'll get disconnected.
Oh my god.
I saw like a meme about it. There's these Japanese players. I don't know what game they were playing. I think it was GTA 5. Where these Japanese players were being harassed by some Chinese players, and they put in the Tiananmen Square massacre date, and those 3 Chinese players got disconnected.
That's great.
Yeah, so if you ever get into an argument with a Chinese person online and they're from China, just put in Tiananmen Square 1989 and they'll get disconnected from the internet.
That's funny as hell.
Yeah. What else can I think of? The Unit 731, I think recently. It pops up a lot on TikTok of like things people should know about World War II. Mm-hmm. Like they don't tell you in the history books and whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's been kind of done to death. Like
I hadn't heard about it, honestly.
Yeah, like I said, they got some like information we use now, and like medicinal stuff and all that stuff now, but a lot of it too was just like torture. It's pretty much torture. Like, oh, what happens if we inject the Black Plague into this person and cut off their hand or whatever?
What the fuck?
And we'll see what happens and write it down.
What happened?
Well, they die. Who would have thunk? Okay. But back then, the Japanese were very savage when it came to like mistreatment of prisoners and and the like. We also didn't do the death march. They did the Bataan Death March.
Yeah, like I said, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know if we were gonna have time because like that was one of the longer research notes that I've done in a while. Because usually we do like 7 to 10 pages, but we talk a lot.
Yeah. So
this one I was kind of worried about keep adding shit because as you can see I've got 2 more here that I wanted to talk about before we quit out the episode. And I was like, I was always doing it and I was researching each one. I was like, I want to put this one. I want to put this one. And I just kept going. Like I was researching this for like 2 hours the other day at work while I was waiting for the computers to get done with what I was installing and whatever. And I was like, shit. If I keep doing this, we're going to be at 20-something pages and we're never going to shut up.
Yeah. So like the Death March, it's when Japan was pretty much dominating all of like Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. They captured a bunch of Australian and New Zealand and British troops. Why?
Just cause?
Well, yeah, and then they forced them to march to the camp they were taking them to.
Oh shit!
And if they stopped, if any of these people who were marching were stopped, or like had to tie their shoe, or they fell down or whatever, just shot on the spot.
Similar to that movie that's coming out, or that came out. I don't remember. I don't think it's come out yet.
Stephen King movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I want to watch it, but it also sounds kind of boring.
Yeah.
Didn't one of these that we talked about that was kind of similar to that, where they were doing the thing, but I think it was in China instead of Japan, where they were like clearing it out.
It was big.
Yeah, this one where they were purifying their society.
Oh yeah.
Similar to that, and then there was one where they were talking about mass walking. Anyways, we went through a lot of things.
But yeah, then obviously Japan got nuked twice, and then
now they're all
it's like that's how the government is like. Oh, now we gotta show ourselves as not threatening.
which is hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, but
yeah, and they don't have a military, but they also do have a military.
aren't theirs the ones that have the pins in their collars?
No, that's North Korea.
Oh, it is, okay. I was like, I remember watching the documentary on it, and I can never remember which Asian country it was.
Yeah, they have the self-defense force, which it's not the military, but it's a military.
Like peace officers, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they they got tanks, they got planes, and all that shit. So.
All right.
Yeah, they got their navy and all that jazz.
Yeah. Okay, so Valentine's Day just happened.
Yep.
And I told you when Valentine's Day was coming up, and I feel like I told you this the first year we started talking to, is I don't like Valentine's Day. I think for a myriad of reasons. Since learning about what I'm about to talk about, when I was in like my first year of college, because I remember writing a paper about something and this kept coming up.
Yeah.
This is the main reason I don't like Valentine's Day, because of this. So, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre was a gangland violence that went on display in 1929 on February 14th. This was organized crime warfare in Chicago, and it reached a moment that would permanently enter American cultural memory. The Prohibition era had already fostered a powerful criminal network built on bootlegging, smuggling, and territorial rivalry, and tensions between factions connected to Al Capone and those aligned with George Bugs Moran had escalated for years. Violence between these groups was common, but the events of that winter morning revealed a calculated escalation meant to send a message far beyond immediate rivals. 7 men associated with Moran's organization were assembled inside a garage after being lured there under false pretenses. Individuals disguised in law enforcement attire entered the building, disarmed the group, and lined them against a wall before opening fire. The method suggested planning not just to kill, but to humiliate and dominate psychologically, staging the scene in a manner that implied authority and
inevitability.
Thank you. When authorities arrived, the brutality of the aftermath captured headlines nationwide and intensified public fascination with organized crime. The massacre became emblematic of the era's contradictions. It demonstrated both the reach of criminal enterprises thriving under alcoholic prohibition and the limitations of institutional control in suppressing them. Though Capone was never convicted for involvement, the event intensified federal attention toward his operations and symbolized how violence could be wielded as spectacle, reputation building, and territorial enforcement. It remains one of the defining moments illustrating how urban criminal conflict shaped public consciousness in the early 20th century in America. That's a pretty good thing about it, but there was so much shit that happened in the background where families were pretty much torn the fuck apart.
Yeah.
And like the background information about it is so sad. And it's like, ever since learning about that and like actually like full blown diving into that, just Valentine's Day feels really fucking weird to me. Being the same day of like the month or year that happened, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't like it. The second one, which again is another one that we all learned about in school, was the Ludlow Massacre, which was the labor conflict and industrial tension in 1914. Years earlier, confrontation tied to labor rights and industrial expansion culminated in tragedy in the southern Colorado area near the community of Ludlow. Coal miners employed by corporations connected to interests such as those of John D. Rockefeller Jr., if you've listened to our earlier episodes, had entered a prolonged strike seeking improved wages, safer working conditions, and recognition of union representation. Tensions between workers, company forces, and state militia intensified as families relocated to tent colonies after eviction from company housing. On April 20th, 1914, armed confrontation erupted between militia units and strikers occupying one such encampment. Gunfire spread across the settlement, and by the end of the day, the colony had been burned. Loss of life included workers and their families, and the destruction of the encampment shocked observers nationwide. The incident became a focal point in debates about labor rights, corporate responsibility, and the role of government in industrial disputes. Beyond immediate casualties, the event influenced public perception of labor organization and industrial power structures in the United States. Investigations, media coverage, and subsequent reforms reflected how single, violent confrontations could reshape a national dialogue surrounding working conditions and economic equity. The massacre illustrates the intensity of how early 20th century labor struggles and how conflict between workers and institutions could escalate into violence affecting entire communities. So I wanted to bring that one up just because for like the States, that was a big thing. And I mean, it is still, I think, pushing a lot of shit, even now when we're, in the 2020s. Because, like, there's still a lot of businesses that will tell you, or companies that will tell you, oh, we have a union, but if you get into the union, we're going to
make it
harder for you, essentially. And yes, the union kind of protects you against that, but like they can't protect you from all of it.
Yeah.
And I think that is really fucking retarded. Like, for instance, there is a company called Teamsters, or a group called Teamsters, who are methodically going through the United States and all of the Amazon warehouses and slowly unionizing every single one of them. They started in California and they are slowly making it across the United States right now. And Amazon is not liking it, obviously.
Well, yeah, from what I've heard about how Amazon treats its employees.
Yeah, they don't treat you great. And Jeff Bezos, if you ever hear this, fuck you, mom, fuck your dog.
Yeah, fuck your bald head.
Fuck your bald head. Because you're a shit-ass human who treats other humans with the lowest amount of fucking dignity. Okay? And that's on somebody who worked for you. Fuck you. I mean, shit. They're trying to unionize different companies, trying to unionize the ones that are over across the seas, because they were doing massive strikes during the holidays last year.
Yeah.
Like, massive. Like, everybody was walking the fuck out. They've done it the last 2 years because of how bad they were being treated. So, I'm surprised nobody here in the United States has done walkouts yet. I'm really surprised.
Thanks, commercialization.
Yay!
Yay! The Industrial Revolution and its consequences. All right. Are you reading this or am I reading this?
I am.
Okay.
But is there anything else you can think of that we could touch a little bit on? Because I hit my two that I was wanting to put in. Because I think those are two kind of big things. At least in my head they are.
Not that I can think of, really.
Okie dokie. Before we close out, sorry that we're late again. Life is a bitch. And, that's all I got to say. Life is a bitch. I don't really got anything else other than that.
Yay, adulting.
Yeah. Anyway, just saying, if you have any ideas or would like to share your stories with us about any historical thing or anything that we've talked about in the past, or, I don't know, you just want to say hi, you can email us at echoesofthepast.pod@gmail.com. You can message us through our Instagram or our Facebook, all of which are Echoes of the Past. Also, share our shit. We are officially at over 300 streams, and we are about to hit our 50th episode. Yay us. And we are now in, what did we see? 17, 18 countries? We're in a lot.
Quite a few.
We're in quite a few, and that is fantastic. Welcome, people of other countries. Don't know how you got here, but welcome. Fantastic, glad you're here.
Yeah, it's like the episode where all the entirety of Bikini Bottom was hiding under Patrick's rock.
Yeah.
He's like, who are you people?
For real, like, I'm curious as to how all these other countries have found us.
Yeah.
When we don't even have that big of a following yet. Like, we've got a whole whopping 22 people, which, love you guys. Thank you. We need more. But, thanks for being here. Especially the ones who've been here from the beginning. Like, your aunt.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We love you guys. So, yeah, if you have any ideas or anything, like I said, message us, whatever. Share our shit. History is not simply a record of survival. It is a record of confrontation between ambition and empathy, between progress and consequence. Each incident we've explored tonight exists within a different context, shaped by unique forces and actors, yet together they outline recurring patterns. Fear, scarcity, ideology, and power have repeatedly produced moments where systems designed to protect people instead endangered them. Studying these events is not an exercise in despair, it is an act of recognition. Documentation ensures that suffering is not reduced to abstraction, and understanding exposes warning signs that might otherwise go unnoticed. Memory becomes responsibility, and responsibility shapes the future choices societies make. The past does not disappear, it informs the boundaries we draw, the policies we debate, and the values we defend. To engage with it, honestly, is to acknowledge both humanity's capacity for harm and its potential for accountability. The challenge moving forward is not to pretend these events are distant anomalies, but to recognize that the conditions that enabled them can emerge again, and that awareness may be one of the few tools capable of preventing repetition.
Thanks for wandering through history with us on Echoes of the Past.
If you liked what you heard, subscribe, rate us, and tell that one friend who still quotes fun facts at parties.
And remember, history may repeat itself,
but we promise not to.
See you in the next Echo.